Well, this source close to A'ja Wilson is claiming they offered A'ja Wilson more money than Caitlin Clark to play in this league.
When you challenge a champion, make sure you're ready. But what unfolds when that champion targets a newcomer and ends up completely embarrassed? What occurs when the league's biggest star attempts to put the rising sensation in her place, only to have everything instantly backfire? Friends, thanks for joining us again. Right now we're exploring the most dramatic, heated, and captivating rivalry in women's professional basketball. We're diving into A'ja Wilson versus Caitlin Clark. For several months, reporters have insisted this is simply healthy rivalry. They've claimed the experienced players are merely giving Caitlin a proper introduction. But let's be honest here. Everyone witnessed what actually took place. Everyone noticed the aggressive plays. Everyone caught the indirect comments during media sessions. And crucially, everyone saw the instant when A'ja Wilson attempted to humiliate Caitlin Clark and instead revealed her own fears to millions watching. This situation goes beyond just the game itself. This involves influence. This involves revenue. And this involves a leadership transition that certain individuals refuse to acknowledge. Because when A'ja Wilson, the dual MVP winner, the title holder, the leading figure of the Vegas Aces, chose to attack Caitlin Clark, she believed she was establishing her authority. She believed she was showing everyone who controls this league. But the response she received, the criticism from supporters, and the answer from Caitlin Clark during games, it was immediate payback. And right now, we're examining precisely how this strategy failed and why A'ja Wilson may have already surrendered the battle before anything truly began. Let's establish the background because circumstances matter tremendously. A'ja Wilson has represented excellence for multiple seasons. She's unquestionable. Her achievements are undeniable. But suddenly arrives Caitlin Clark, a first-year player, someone who hasn't competed professionally anywhere yet, and she's already packing stadiums that A'ja Wilson couldn't pack in 5 seasons. She's securing a $28 million endorsement contract with Nike, the largest ever recorded, before A'ja even revealed her own branded footwear. You believe that didn't hurt? You believe A'ja Wilson observing a 22-year-old athlete from Iowa receiving the celebrity treatment that she thought she earned? Wasn't bothered somehow. Obviously she was. And that envy, that bitterness eventually erupted outward. It began with the indirect jabs, the social media posts regarding private plane travel and how certain individuals receive preferential treatment. It progressed with the statements regarding ethnicity where A'ja suggested that Caitlin's fame was mainly because of her being Caucasian, disregarding the reality that Caitlin was shooting from half court and scoring 40 points nightly. But the genuine attempt to humiliate Caitlin happened during games and through the storyline that the Aces attempted to create. The strategy was straightforward. Intimidate the newcomer, make her appear incompetent, highlight her weaknesses. A'ja Wilson and the Aces intended to introduce Caitlin to professional competition by physically overwhelming her, pressuring her, and making her performance look awful so they could declare, "Look, she's simply overhyped." They intended to compile footage of Caitlin Clark failing against the genuine champion. A'ja Wilson desired that footage. She desired that trending clip where she stops Caitlin or beats her defensively and glares intensely, communicating to everyone that there are different skill tiers here. But here's how it reversed. And it reversed spectacularly. Rather than appearing like the experienced champion delivering instruction, A'ja Wilson and her teammates appeared like attackers who were fixated on a first-year player. The hostility was excessive. The attention was overly concentrated. It didn't resemble competitive sports. It resembled something deeply personal, and the supporters immediately understood. When you're the MVP, when you're the absolute best, you don't require such extreme effort to establish dominance over a newcomer by attempting so aggressively to humiliate Caitlin. A'ja Wilson accidentally promoted her. She demonstrated to everyone that Caitlin Clark is a genuine danger. You don't deploy defensive schemes and physical intimidation against someone insignificant. You implement that against someone dangerous. A'ja validated Caitlin's importance by approaching her like the primary opponent. And let's discuss the commercial consequences because this becomes absolutely amusing. A'ja Wilson assumed that by reducing Caitlin's attention, she would show Nike and corporate partners that she's the genuine investment. She assumed if she outperformed Caitlin, the supporters would change allegiances. But the complete reverse occurred. The continuous criticism of Caitlin Clark only strengthened her support base. It generated a Caitlin versus everyone storyline that's promotional perfection. Every instance A'ja or another veteran throws criticism, Caitlin's merchandise revenue increases. Every instance they attempt to intimidate her, the viewership numbers climb because audiences want witnessing if the newcomer can endure. A'ja Wilson attempted to control access to the league, but she simply handed Caitlyn complete control. Consider the perception. You have Aya Wilson, an established icon, appearing resentful, appearing bothered, and you have Caitlyn Clark absorbing the attacks, recovering immediately, and remaining completely silent. She isn't responding negatively through media. She isn't complaining online publicly. She's simply competing. And that quietness, that calm unwillingness to participate in the conflict, it's making Aya Wilson furious. It's the greatest strategic response. By ignoring Aya's attempts to embarrass her, Caitlyn is basically communicating, "I'm participating to compete. You're participating for attention." There was one particular instance that perfectly demonstrates this reversal. Everyone recalls the excitement surrounding their initial matchup, the aces facing the Fever. The energy was incredible. Aya Wilson started intensely, attempting to defend everything, attempting to score whenever she controlled possession. And absolutely, Aya produced statistics. She's a talented athlete.
Instead,
Nobody questions
the headline
that.
was why are
But the game's
WNBA
narrative wasn't Aya's superiority. The narrative was, why are the Aces competing like it's the championship finale against a struggling franchise? It appeared frantic. And throughout all that intensity, Caitlyn Clark delivered those characteristic fadeaway shots. She executed assists that were incredibly precise. She persisted. And after everything concluded, the discussion wasn't centered on Aya's excellence. The discussion centered on the animosity. It centered on the insecurity. Aya Wilson wanted the story to read "Wilson dominates Clark." Instead, the story read, "Why are WNBA veterans so threatened by Caitlyn Clark?" That represents a catastrophic publicity mistake. That represents a failure of monumental scale. Aya Wilson, who has dedicated years cultivating an image of encouragement and guidance, suddenly appeared like the antagonist in her own narrative. Let's examine more closely the endorsement contract dimension of this, because you cannot disconnect the finances from the hostility. When information emerged that Caitlyn was receiving $28 million in a branded footwear deal instantly, Aya Wilson's response was revealing. She shared social media posts, she endorsed negative reactions, she communicated clearly she felt overlooked. And honestly, she has valid concerns. Aya Wilson deserved signature footwear years earlier. She's a multiple championship winner. But rather than channeling that frustration toward Nike or toward the corporate structure, it seemed like she channeled that intensity toward Caitlyn. She attempted to position Caitlyn as the representation of racial advantage in the league. She attempted to embarrass Caitlyn by insinuating she didn't deserve it. But that reversed, because when you examine the data, the attendance figures, the broadcast numbers, the product sales, Caitlyn Clark is creating more income for the league in 90 days than most athletes do throughout entire careers. Reality doesn't accommodate your emotions. By criticizing Caitlyn's contract, Aya simply emphasized the reality that she wasn't driving growth identically. It created a direct comparison that Aya Wilson actually doesn't win when we discuss commercial measurements. It prompted people to investigate the statistics and discover, hold on, Caitlyn actually is undercompensated for the worth she delivers. Aya attempted to reveal Caitlyn as a manufactured sensation, but instead she revealed the WNBA's inability to promote its own talent successfully for the previous 10 years. And what about the supporters?
That has been the biggest thing, is speculation around if Caitlyn Clark would be playing. The league also said that they would give her equity in the league. So from this note, the internet kind of ran wild with that, including myself, because another player who is also number 22, who a lot of people have also been speculating about, is A'ja Wilson.
This represents the most critical element for Aya. The WNBA maintains a dedicated supporter group, certainly. But Caitlyn Clark attracted countless new followers. These individuals don't understand the background. They don't understand the internal dynamics. They simply observe a newcomer being attacked by hostile experienced players. Aya Wilson is threatening to distance the fresh audience that is finally funding the paychecks. When you attempt to humiliate the crowd's beloved, you transform into the opposition of the masses. We observed reactions throughout social platforms stating, "I previously admired Aya, but this conduct is unpleasant. Why is she so resentful? She's behaving like a secondary school intimidator that represents reputation harm that is difficult to repair." The contradiction is, if Aya Wilson had simply embraced Caitlyn Clark, if she had received her positively and stated, "Let's expand this league collectively," Aya would be the absolute champion. She would be the gracious leader mentoring the upcoming talent. She would have increased merchandise revenue because the advancing wave elevates everything. But she selected confrontation. She selected to attempt and diminish her. And currently she appears like the established authority clinging to influence that is disappearing away like granules through her grasp. We must also address the competitive embarrassment strategy concerning defensive play. The Aces' approach was to challenge Caitlyn throughout the court, apply pressure immediately. They wanted to create mistakes and make her appear incapable controlling possession. And certainly, Caitlyn had mistakes. She's a first-year floor general on a weak roster. But every instant she defeated that defensive pressure, every instant she penetrated the coverage and located an available partner or shot from 30 feet, it made the Aces' defensive aggression appear foolish. It appeared like excessive force. It's like deploying military equipment to a minor confrontation and still receiving cuts. When you exert that much effort to contain one athlete and she still produces 15, 20 points and 7 assists, you haven't humiliated her. You've confirmed her. Additionally, let's examine the relationships within the league. Other athletes are beginning to recognize this failure too. We're observing players understand that the Hate Caitlyn movement is a terrible image and Aya is the leader of that movement. If the league opinion changes and people begin viewing the veterans as resentful, that damages everyone's earnings. The fresh broadcasting contract is approaching. The worth of the league is increasing dramatically because of the Caitlyn Clark influence. By attempting to embarrass the revenue generator, Aya Wilson is basically harming the source that is preparing to provide her a maximum contract. It is lacking foresight. It is reactive and it is terrible strategy. Caitlyn Clark's answer to everything has been the absolute destroy them with graciousness and destroy them with achievement. She compliments Aya in media appearances. She acknowledges her as a talented athlete. She honors the competition. And that difference makes Aya's hostility appear even more negative. It makes Aya appear unjustified. It creates an impression of a unilateral rivalry where the veteran is fighting an imaginary opponent. Caitlyn is occupying mental space without cost and she isn't even covering expenses. So, where do we proceed from this point? The strategy to embarrass Caitlyn Clark has collapsed. The introduction to the WNBA instances have occurred and she is still present. She is still beginning. She is still filling arenas. The storyline has transformed from can Caitlyn endure to why won't the veterans accept her? Aya Wilson needs to adjust. She needs to recognize that this reversed and modify her approach because currently every instant she displays frustration, every instant she posts indirect criticism, she surrenders slightly more of the credibility she worked tremendously hard to achieve. The truth is the leadership is transitioning. Whether Aya Wilson accepts it or not, it doesn't indicate Aya isn't exceptional anymore. It doesn't indicate she isn't an MVP. But it indicates she isn't the singular focus anymore. And attempting to embarrass the emerging focus doesn't make you the central figure again. It simply makes you the antagonist. And in athletics, the antagonist typically fails ultimately. Aya Wilson attempted to manipulate the game of public opinion. She attempted to manipulate the game of humiliation and she failed immediately. The supporters united behind the underdog. The statistics favored the newcomer and the game of basketball stays unchanged. The ball enters the net and as long as Caitlyn Clark continues placing the ball in the net from ranges we have never witnessed previously, no quantity of criticism, no quantity of aggressive plays, and no quantity of veteran resentfulness can prevent what is approaching. What do you all believe? Did Aya Wilson exceed acceptable limits? Do you believe she is authentically envious of the recognition Caitlyn is receiving, or is this simply competitive intensity that the reporters are exaggerating disproportionately? I want to understand your perspectives. Is Caitlyn Clark enduring the intimidation, or has Aya Wilson effectively revealed her weaknesses? Share your opinion in the comments section. And if you appreciated this thorough examination into the conflict, click that like button enthusiastically, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notifications so you never overlook an update on the WNBA battle. This is merely the start. The playoffs are approaching and if these two teams face each other again, it is going to be absolute explosiveness.